Hello everyone, it is great to be back with you once again here on motorsport.tv as we continue our Super GT series as we discuss and we review all of the races that are past and coming up. I'm Jake Sanson, with me once again is motorsport.com reporter for Japanese motorsport Jamie Klein, and we are joined by a very special guest from Team Impel, last year's champion Bertrand Baguette is joining us on the show. Bertrand, thank you so much for giving up your time to come and hang out with us.
No problem, my pleasure. Hello, guys.
Great to be with you. And we're going to talk a little bit about the race that has obviously just been the first round of the championship at Okayama, one of the most bizarre and strange of Super GT races you could ever have asked for to start the season. And we'll obviously preview the upcoming race at Fuji next week. So, Jamie, first and foremost, Okayama, have you got your breath back yet?
Well, no, not quite. I mean, it was such a crazy race. I mean, and also to be there in that terrible weather. Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think my main memory will just be getting soaked trying to find drivers in the paddock after the race because the rain was really coming down super heavy. I mean, of course, the race was stopped because of the poor weather 3 times, in fact, and then the rain just kept on coming even after the race had finished. So, but besides that, I think... of course, Nissan with a 1-2, Michelin tyres showing their superiority again in those conditions. But I think it got a spare a thought also for the Toms guys, Riton Miata and Schultz Boy, for that ill-fated final pit stop where the front left wheel wasn't attached properly. Miata leaves the pit lane with 3 wheels on his wagon, has to park the car, and there's just that horrible inevitability about it because he sort of went around, I think, turn 1 and didn't actually park up, or the chasing cars didn't actually pass him. He didn't quite give up the ghost immediately, so there was just that delayed sense of agony for the Toms crew. So that was quite a memorable moment towards the end of the race as well.
I mean, in both categories, we had a lot of drama and a lot of intrigue. Bertrand, behind the wheel of that car, I mean, you must have had one of the toughest and certainly one of the most grueling races in terms of the technical challenge of it all.
Yeah, it was a real tough one, especially because before the beginning of the race with our team, we were quite sure that there would be no rain at all. So we were going for a full dry race. And after about 4 laps or 5 laps, they told me on the radio, there is a small shower coming. And at the end, it was nothing but a big rain. So it was difficult. We got quite lucky as well with the full course yellow. I ended up doing a few laps with slick tires, being the safety car under the full rain. So it was not an easy one. Very easy to do mistakes, very difficult condition, at the restart after the safety car, I couldn't see anything. I was P14 and I couldn't see a thing because of the car in front. So it was a tough race for the first one, but we made it through it. So that's the most important.
So, of course, it was always going to be a very tough race throughout with the Nissans breaking clear in the first port of call. And we always knew that there were going to be a lot of difficulties along the way. But once the rain came and the hailstones came in, obviously, as well. I mean, what else can you throw the drivers in Super GT? It was always a very tricky and technical race. A lot of contenders actually fell by the wayside in various points through the course of the race, particularly being caught out by the opening of the pit lane. That was very difficult to lose 2 of the big guns, particularly the Kunimitsu Honda that was looking very strong. And one of the Toyotas as well. It was always going to be a very tricky race after that point, but there was a lot of ebb and flow up in the top end. In a race that difficult, Jamie, I mean, obviously we know that the weather played a huge factor, but what have we actually learned about how the form currently is in Super GT in 2023? What have we really taken from that race?
Yeah, it's hard, I think, at the best of times with Okayama, it's hard to really draw too many firm conclusions because you look at the 2 previous years at Okayama, both dominated by Toyota, and they didn't really maintain that form for most of the season in both cases. So obviously the rain makes it even more impossible to really say with too much certainty. Plus we only had the one dry official preseason test at the same track with its kind of unique quirk. So I think at this stage it's almost impossible to say which manufacturer has the upper hand or who are the real title favourites. I think we saw all the kind of usual cars you would expect performing well, and I don't think there are any huge surprises in the rain. I think the fact that it was a Michelin Nismo 1-2, of course, echoes of the Sugo race last year. I think that was no surprise at all. I think, you know, the Bridgestones obviously put up a very good fight in the worst of the conditions, and certainly the 36 Tom's Toyota was pretty unfortunate to miss out on at least P2, or maybe if the race had gone back to green, they could have been a sniff of the win there. But yeah, I think in terms of really what we learned, I don't think maybe too much, just besides the fact that, you know, Michelin is still the tyre to have when it rains, but, you know, Bridgestone isn't that far behind. And I think we'll see, we could see perhaps other tracks, an even closer battle between those two tyre makers.
So if we look at the changing fortunes of the three manufacturers, I mean, Toyota, you have to say, they always came in to the first round of the championship a little on the back foot. What they were really good at was turning it around for qualifying. They really put themselves into a good position, ready to challenge. But then in the race, it just all got away. And, you know, a number of circumstances that really played against the Toyota brand. And there were so many opportunities for them to take, you know, not just a podium, but the overall win that really slipped away. And that's definitely something that they're going to have to review. Over at Honda, you know, the ARTA had to do a chassis change, which obviously, you know, compromised their race preparation, which obviously is not the way to start the season. But then again, just like with Toyota, Honda had a perfect opportunity with the Kunimitsu car, the number 100 Stanley machine, to get the victory, and it slipped away within the first half of the race. And again, you know, that's obviously going to be something that they'll have to reflect on. With Nissan, I think you have to say, yes, they had pace, yes, they had speed, but in a race as crazy as that, they also had rather a lot of fortune on their side. I mean, Bertrand, let's come to you. You actually said at the time, you know, you were quite relieved to come through after such a crazy race. I mean, it was difficult for the Impel car to match the others at various points in the race, particularly, obviously, the number 3 and the number 23, your teammate, well, your colleagues on the other part of the Nissan fabric were very, very fast out in the course of the weekend. But you guys really struggled to match them, certainly through qualifying. What is it that you guys were able to benefit from in the race? Was it just pure fortune that kind of worked your way through, or was there an opportunity for you guys to utilize the circumstances in that race to really put it back?
No, I think we were much faster in the race than what we were in quali. Obviously, we were struggling in the rain, basically. The quali was fully wet. Most of the race was full wet as well. If you look at the first 15 laps, when I took the start of the race, and I struggled a lot with the tire warm-up, so I lost immediately 1 or 2 positions. But once my tire were hot, I could come back. I overtook, I think, 4, 5 cars, something like this in the dry before it started to rain. And the gap with the 2 Michelin guys at the front kept getting smaller and smaller. All the Bridgestone guys were coming back on them. And they got lucky, if I can say, because it started to rain again. Because I think that if the race was full dry, maybe it would have been another story. I think that still under the rain in the race, our pace was not as good as number 3. Even if, and 23, well, the 2 Michelin guys, even if I could keep Shirsan behind me for 6, 7 laps, he overtook me, I overtook him again by the outside after that, and it was a nice fight, but at the end I couldn't do anything. He was just faster than me, but I think that our pace in the race was not fast enough, of course, but not that bad neither. It was quite fast in the dry, not so fast in the rain. But nothing to worry too much about, except if it's raining the next 7 races, then we are in big trouble. But I expect that we can have some dry races in the future, and we will be okay, I think. But for sure, under the rain like this, nobody could beat Michelin last weekend in Okayama.
Well, one of the things we certainly reflect on from that first race, I mean, Jamie's already pointed out one of the highlights, or certainly one of the big talking points from the race. One of my favourite moments from it, Bertrand, was your mad dash, making your way up past, I think it was about 4 or 5 cars in the space of 2 laps. I mean, there was a really strong run at one point. You were really mixing it, utilising the traffic and pitching where the car could go. Is that where you really get your enjoyment factor out of racing in Super GT? Is it the play-by-play, using the traffic of GT300 to your advantage?
Oh, yeah, I love it, I have to say. I love it, and I have to say that the good thing about Super GT is this mix of categories, and GT300 and the fact that, I can say that 90% of the GT300 drivers, they are also professionals. So you can basically trust them, and you know that when you come behind them, they saw you, and you can be aggressive when you need to be aggressive, and you can try moves like I did in Okayama, like going by the outside of turn 6. At some point, we were 3, 4, maybe 5 wide. I don't know, because I couldn't see the car on me because you have some dead angle with the mirrors and the camera. So I just went for it. But you know that all those guys, they are professionals, and there is a lot of respect as well. They're not gonna do anything stupid on you, so you can take more risk, and that's part of the magic of Super GT. You know, you have this traffic, and even if you are stuck behind somebody, you just need to be patient, and traffic will be coming, and you will see an opportunity to overtake them. So yeah, you're right. I think I overtook 5 cars, I think, in 2 laps at that point. So I was really enjoying myself inside the car. I wish I could drive more, but I had to give the car to Kazuki at some point. So even if the result was not what we wanted to, well, still P6 was okay, but I enjoyed that race so much, for sure.
I mean, it was great fun for us to watch. We really had, so much drama from you, and that's, I think, one of the great things to take away from that race. Let's talk about the rundown of the results, because obviously we had a Nissan 1-2, as we mentioned. Sugi Matsuda and Ronnie Quintarelli coming through in front of the number 3, the NDDP Racing Nissan of Katsumasa Chiyo and Mitsunori Takabashi. A podium in the end, a very fortuitous one, I guess, for the ARTA Honda of Tomoko Najiri and Toshiki Oyu. We'll never really know if Kenta Yamashita and Kazuya Oshima would have been able to overhaul them on the race restart from 4th position. The top 6, though, for the second Nissan, third Nissan, I should say, the reigning champions, Bertrand here with us and Kazuki Hiramine. If you look down the order, though, to the GT300 race, that was a race of pure attrition. I mean, Jamie, I think the Up Garage NSX boys, were praying to every single god that exists on the planet. They were so panicked about the race restarting under full racing conditions. I mean, they're going to see this as, an amazing opportunity for them. It's their first win for a heck of a long time. And it definitely spices things up in GT300, especially when you look at the fact that the realised Nissan was only able to get into the top 10, and they had so many, teams that could have won it, and perhaps the Leon Mercedes, was always going to be the favourite to win it.
Yeah, really crazy shuffle at the end in GT300 as well. I mean, the order changed so many times with the changing conditions, I think even more so than GT500, because the Up Garage car sort of, well, they started P18, didn't they? It came really from nowhere. I think it was that change from wets back to slicks that really did it for them, though, because they got on the slicks early. They started doing some really fast lap times. So they took a bit of a risk by coming in early, but it obviously paid big dividends. And as you mentioned, the first win for that team with the NSX GT3, their last win came at Okayama with the old mother chassis Toyota. And of course, Shun Koide, we have to mention the fact that he won on his debut, which is quite a rare feat as well. So that's a great start to his Super GT career. Yeah, like you say, Leon Racing will be disappointed because they had such amazing pace in the dry, and to be honest, they were in control for quite a lot of the race, even with the changing conditions. But it was just that middle tyre change going from wets to slicks that. I guess they were just caught slightly off guard, and I suppose when you're leading the race, you're not going to be the one who's taking the biggest risk. So it's one of those things. I'm sure they're going to be strong, throughout the season. The very consistent package of the Mercedes and the Bridgestone tyres. But also a shout out for the third place Max Racing car, which I believe was not even in the top 10 before that final dash into the pits, which came after the first red flag, if I remember, and they somehow come up third. So. Speaking to JP de Oliveira, because I think he was the car just ahead of the Max Racing car at the time. He said that he sort of made the good observation that they were just able to cruise into their pit box at the very start of the pit lane, do a clean stop, whereas everybody else was sort of tripping over themselves. As Bertrand knows, that's a bit of a typical thing that can happen at Okayama with very tight pit lane, not enough space. If you've got cars in front of you or behind you, it makes pit stops nightmares. So they were just able to gain a whole heap of positions there. So yeah, good for Kimi Sato and Atsushi Miyake to get on the podium there. It was quite a fortunate one. But yeah, all sorts of storylines. I mean, Bruno Spengler did a brilliant job on his debut, only P6 in the end. They were a bit unlucky to miss out on a podium, in fact. Yeah, and like you mentioned, the Kondo Racing, the reigning champion, I think Tepe Natori did a brilliant job because he had a real burn from the stern as well. Sadly, ABS problems during the Oliveira stint sort of undid some of their hard work and then losing out in the pits at the end. So, yeah, a real mixed bag in GT300. And yeah, I think we've definitely seen some signs of some new contenders emerging this year.
So a very strange race, but certainly a very exciting one. Let's talk about some of the things that have happened as a result of that race, or some of the headlines that are coming through. Bertrand, one of the things I want to pick up on is that over the course of that weekend at Okayama, Super GT revealed that there were some discussions starting up again in the paddock to bring back racing overseas, outside of Japan. Now, this is obviously something that will affect you and the team if it comes to fruition. You know, if you're still racing by the time we go abroad again. I mean, what does that give you in terms of an excitement and something to look forward to about bringing these cars to races outside of Japan?
I would love to. We went a few times to Thailand, to Buriram. It was an amazing event. A lot of fans over there. A great circuit as well. You know, it's always good to do something else. You know, like I don't say like the track we have in Japan are amazing and really nice, but when you do all the time like Okayama, Fuji, Suzuka, Sugo, Topolis, you want to see something else. You know, it's good to go with CPGT abroad to do some of the tracks. Normally, without COVID, we should have been to Sepang as well, which is another like great track. I heard Bando-san was speaking about China, so I would love to do so. A first sign of us going back overseas would be that we could go again to Sepang to do those winter testing. We used to do 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks of winter testing during December, January in Sepang to find the hot weather to develop the tires. You know how important it is to develop the tires at Super GT. So I really hope that we can go back overseas. It's not easy, I know, because it costs a lot of money, but I'm sure that Bando-san will take the right decision for that, and he loves to go to those races, so I'm sure he will be pushing for it as well.
And one of the big stories that come out of the race at Okayama, Jamie, obviously one of the incidents that triggered a stoppage was the crash that we saw for the Pacific AMG Mercedes. And that crew is now not going to be able to compete next time out in Fuji. I mean, when you consider that the race is several weeks later, that just shows you the extent of how heavy the damage and how heavy the task is to get them back up to race pace again.
Yeah, it was one of those where it didn't look like it was the most serious impact. I mean, of course, both the drivers, Liang Jiatong and Takeshi Kagure, were both fine. But, you know, sometimes these crashes can be deceptive. If there's a damaged chassis, then it needs replacing. Obviously, they're running the Mercedes AMG GT3, which probably means if they do need a fresh chassis, there are some running in Super Taikyu, but it's possible they may need to source one from overseas, or it's either way, it's going to take time. Yeah, quite a tight turnaround for Fuji because there is a little bit of a gap, but if you do need to change a chassis, it's probably getting a bit tight, especially for a team in the GT300 class. So yeah, kind of unfortunate that they're not going to be there, because we saw them featuring quite strongly in the points in the first race, running the Mercedes, of course, switching from the Ferrari last year, and Liang Jiatong as well. I think doing quite a solid job in his first outing. He probably wasn't expecting to be running as high as he was, but that was just the way it fell with the early strategy and the field being split and them getting the right sort of side of it. So yeah, it is a big shame we won't see them at Fuji, but hopefully they've shown a little bit what they can do, and they say they're going to be preparing to come back for the following race at Suzuka. So fingers crossed that they make it there, and we'll be seeing them right in the mix again.
The only other massive bit of news that obviously affects Fuji is that we were hoping in the rookie test that she was going to conduct that the Japanese Formula Regional champion Miki Koyama was going to be able to get her rookie test passed, and I can delightfully tell you that she has. So we will be seeing her on the starting grid next time out in Fuji. Speaking of which, Bertrand, this is obviously going to be a big difference in terms of a race circuit compared to what we see at Okayama. What's it like from a driver's perspective? Obviously, it's going to be the first 450-kilometer race of the year. It's a very different circuit in terms of its style, its ebb and flow. I mean, what do you like about it? What are we expecting to see?
Well, like you said, it's the first 450-kilometer race, so strategy-wise will be very different, very interesting to see Once again, like we saw last year, what will pit early, will pit late. You can see different type of strategies. On those short races, you tend to see like always the same strategy. So everybody tries to pit just before like a potentially first safety car to avoid getting caught behind a safety car. So strategy-wise is always quite interesting. And then Fuji is always a tricky track because you have this long straight line, so you need to be really, really fast in that straight line. It's all about compromise. You need to be fast in the straight line, but at the same time, you need a lot of downforce for the last sector, which is quite twisty and slow. So setup-wise, it's quite tricky, but I think it's a track that suits our Nissan really, really well. And luckily for us, the two Michelin car will be heavy. We will be still quite light. So I think we have a good chance to perform really well. Okayama, as I said before, I was happy with the top 5. We did P6, but Fuji, we need to perform better. We need to be fighting at least for the podium, and even better would be fighting for the win. So we will be working hard for that. And but it will be an interesting track, and interesting to see as well with the new CNF, so the carbon neutral fuel engine will be more important there. Who has the advantage here?
So I want to take these last few minutes that we have, obviously, as an opportunity now, Bertrand, to get to know you a little better. We asked our fans of Motorsport.tv's coverage of Super GT to drop some questions in. Please keep an eye out for that in future shows as well, because we'd love to have your input on the content that we create. First of all, I've got some questions for you, Bertrand. Calvin Loyal on Facebook wanted to know, what's the most difficult thing about racing in Japan? You've been at it for a fair few years now. What's the biggest challenge?
Communication, maybe. Communication. Now it's getting better, but I can tell you at the beginning, my first year, especially my first year in CPGT, and well, it happened again in the past, but in the after that, but most of the people, they speak basically only Japanese, very few English. So I couldn't speak a word of Japanese when I arrived. So communication was really tricky. You need to make yourself understandable in English, and now I know like I can speak a little bit Japanese, so it's getting easier. And in Impol, I'm in a very international team. But like for example, at Real Racing, in my last 3 years at Honda, that team was great. Was really powerful. I was really good, but basically it was only Japanese, so it was not always easy. But that's maybe the tricky part. But except that, to be honest, I feel so lucky to be able to race here in Japan. Those people are great. They take good care of me. The car I drive is amazing. The championship is amazing. I have so much fun. Like when you look at Okayama race again, when I got out of the car, I was quite angry to have to pit. I wanted to go to the end. I was having so much fun. So I feel really, really lucky. And this is only a small problem, communication. You get used to it. I speak a little bit of Japanese now, but I feel so lucky to be here and so happy to be racing in Japan.
If you need any more hints on Japanese, Jamie knows it all. I
know.
I saw him. Well, I saw him the other day on that Yokohama video, and Jamie knows what he's doing. He's fine. It's all good.
He's way better than me.
Always ask if needed. So, on Twitter, the real Leo Cool wanted to ask Bertrand, you've driven in multiple different disciplines of motor racing now, but how does Super GT, how do the cars compare to everything else you've driven? I mean, how much fun are they to push to the limit? How difficult are they to drive? He also wanted to congratulate you on winning the championship last year.
Thank you.
Very nice. But so how difficult are these cars to drive at the limit?
At the beginning, it's not easy to drive at all, and you could see it when even when fantastic drivers arrived in GT. I think about Eiki, Kovalainen, Jensen, Felix Rosenqvist. You can see the first year it's not an easy car to drive. It's not like you arrive in the car and you straight away really quick. So it's a really, really fast car. We have really good tires, like confidential tires, a lot of grip, and the car is running a lot. It's a GT car, so you get a lot of grip for the tires, and the car is running a lot. So sometimes you take a fast corner and you think, okay, I took it at the limit of the car, and then you check the data and you see your teammate is taking the corner like 10 kilometers an hour faster than you. So to understand where is the limit of the car is quite tricky at the beginning, and you need a lot of kilometers, a lot of laps to really understand where is the limit of the car. But once you can drive those cars to the limits, I think, I drove many different stuff, Formula Renault 3.5, LMP2, LMP1. it might be the fastest car I ever drove. I mean, even if it's a GT car, it's the fastest GT in the world, and I would be curious to do some laps in Europe, on tracks in Europe, to compare to other cars. But I'm sure that now we are faster than the current LMDH. Sorry, I have to say. I would be curious to see how fast it is compared to the Formula Renault 3.5 I was driving in the past. It's for sure way faster than the LMP2 I drove in the past. It's a really fast car, and it's not the easiest to understand at the beginning, but once you get where the limit is, it's just amazing to drive.
You actually made a point of it, and I kind of wanted to pick up on that. But you were talking about when, the McLaren Formula One race winners, Heikki Kovalainen and Jenson Button, came in. As fellow drivers from European competition, like yourself, to come in, that must have been quite an interesting dynamic when they were in the championship. What was it like to kind of get their sort of feedback of a sort of a similar dynamic of them coming over from European single-seater competition and jumping into Super GT? That must have been fun.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, I was... different team, but teammate with Jenson for 2 years. I was racing, real racing when he was driving Kunimitsu. So it was really interesting to see how he was walking. Obviously, at the beginning, like everybody, even if he's F1 world champion, it's struggling a little bit. But it was quite interesting and impressive to see how well he adapted to the car race by race and how fast he was at the end. He was especially really impressive in the race, and his race management was really good. He was really good in traffic, really good at managing tires, really good at staying cool even under pressure when they were fighting for the championship. So it was great to share those 2 years with Jenson, and great to say that I could share my feelings, hang out with a F1 world champion, and then it shows how Super GT is considered in Europe. I mean, it's like I said, maybe the best GT championship right now in the world. So it's great to see those great names coming to Super GT with us.
Oh, we won't disagree with you, Bertrand. We absolutely agree, me and Jamie. I mean, now that Japan has opened up a little bit more, Jamie, perhaps hopefully we'll get to see a few more of some of those big names from Europe coming and having a play. That would be amazing to see in the future.
Would be nice. I feel alone here.
Yeah. We're down to just the three international drivers in GT500 with Bertrand, Ronnie, and Giuliano Lacey. So, of course, Quintarelli has been in Japan such a long time. It's not quite the same as having a big name coming, directly from another championship. So, yeah, I think we have been missing that, and I think it just needs one kind of one driver to have some kind of link, because when Jenson came, of course, he'd had a close relationship with Honda earlier in his F1 career. And I suppose he'd always had a kind of fascination. Of course, his ex-wife was half Japanese, so there's another connection there. So that helped. I think that smoothed the way for Jenson to do that one-off. He did the one-off at Suzuka 1000K, which was the race that Bertrand won, I believe, with Mugen. And then, of course, then he was hooked. So I almost feel like, we said this on the coverage before, I think at least once, if not more times, that we need guest drivers back for longer races, because it provides a way in. You need to give the drivers a taste of the cars, and then they discover just how fast they are, how fun they are, and what the championship has to offer, and then they'll be interested. But other than that, you do need a driver that has a kind of either just knows about the championship, or is mates with another driver that's done it. I don't know if if Bertrand is friendly enough with any of the current.
It's got a massive.
You must have a good contact book, Bertrand. So get on the phone, start telling them how amazing it is. Hopefully, one of them will take up your invite.
Yeah, it would be cool to have more foreign drivers. Of course, I mean, I think everybody knows how good Super GT is. For sure, COVID didn't help at all, because before COVID, we were a few of us here. I mean, a few gaijin, like we call us here, and COVID, like everybody disappeared. I was the only one who survived. But I'm sure that we will see more foreign drivers coming in the future, and the championship is really healthy, really good, really nice. And like I said, the guys that take good care of us here, so there is no reason nobody comes back.
Fantastic. Well, we've got a couple of questions before we end. Obviously, you're aware we're tight for time. Lavernier on Instagram wants to know, how difficult is it to actually manage the traffic during a race? You obviously talk about how much you love it, but with the speed difference between GT500 and GT300, and on a circuit as tight as Okayama as well, how difficult is it to race in the traffic?
Yeah, and like you say, Okayama, Sugo as well, quite difficult tracks for traffic, but you need to be smart. Basically, you need to be smart, and you need to time your overtake. It's not like you arrive right behind GT300 and you hit the brakes and you wait for an opportunity to overtake. You need to look far in front, far ahead, and try to time it, like to overtake him in a straight line, or to do a good exit of the corner to overtake him. And you can lose a lot of time in traffic, to be honest. If you don't think correctly, if you don't take the right decision, you can lose a lot of time. It's completely part of the race. You have some drivers that are really, really fast on one lap in quali, and then they're really struggling in traffic in the race. So it's completely part of Super GT, and it's not an easy thing. The more experience you have, the better you get at it. So it's always something I loved to do in the LMP2. It was the same in Super GT. It was the same. I love traffic. I love like the extra plus it brings to the race. It's complete part of Super GT. And the good thing, like I said, is that basically 90% of the GT300 driver, they are professional drivers as well. They know how to drive. They know what to do when they see a GT500 behind them. So yeah, it's not easy, but it's really enjoyable for sure.
Fantastic. The last question that we have comes from Stefan Sidler on Facebook. It's a light-hearted one, so we can end on a really cool note here. European or Japanese cuisine? Come on, you've been out in Japan quite a long time now. You must be used to it by now.
Yeah, that's a little... I have to say Japanese cuisine, for sure.
Good man.
Yeah, the Japanese food is amazing, and I feel like I can eat as much as I want. I don't get fat, so it's so much more healthy, and I enjoy it so much. Yeah, for sure, Japanese cuisine, no hesitation.
Right, we won't tell Hoshido-san that you can eat as much Japanese cuisine as possible.
He's pushing me so much all the time, he loves to go for dinner, and he's always like, please eat, don't worry, please eat. So he doesn't care at all, so he's good time.
Fantastic. No extra weight ballast needed in Fuji. Brilliant. Jamie, we obviously have a really exciting second race coming up. There's still a lot of questions about 2023 that haven't really been answered thanks to how crazy Okayama was. So what do you think we can expect to see in Fuji? Who do we think is going to have the form?
Good question. Well, hopefully it'll be dry, because we didn't even get the test dry. The pre-season test was wet, and then of course the Okayama test was wet as well. Sorry, the Okayama opener was wet. So we don't really have a clear read on, as Bertrand mentioned earlier, about the carbon neutral fuel, who exactly is doing the best, because of course that's going to have an impact on the speed trap figures, which always plays a big role at Fuji with the huge start-finish straight. And I think with the chaos at Okayama, it also means a lot of cars are quite light for this race that we would expect to be at the front. So, namely both Tom's cars. Toyota's often strong at Fuji, Tom's in particular. I really expect the 36 to be in the thick of the action again. And also, the Kunimitsu Honda is light. The 16 ARTA Honda, which did finish P5, but then got penalised for illegal pit stop and driver change during the red flag, so they come to Fuji with no weight as well. So there's several cars there that don't have weight, and ARTA has tended to be the best of the Honda teams at Fuji in recent years, just for whatever reason, whether that's setup or tyre selection, but they tend to go well there. So I have a feeling we're going to see the ARTA Hondas, even the number 8 car. I think the third place number of kilos of ballast is probably, in a 450k race, is probably not going to ruin your race completely. I think it's, it does have an impact, but the longer the race is, generally, the more your race pace and your tyre selection outweighs the sheer one lap pace. So I think they'll be strong too. So, and of course, we have to mention the number 1 import machine as well with our special guest. So I'm sure there's going to be several cars in the mix, and hopefully we're going to come away from that weekend with a much better idea of which is the strongest package for the rest of the season of the big 3 manufacturers.
Yeah, you're pretty convinced, Bertrand, that you guys are going to have the pace there in Fuji. You're pretty confident.
Yeah, I thought like Jamie was forgetting me because he was not talking about me, but
he was saying the best for last.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I hope we would be in the mix for a podium at least. I don't say we're gonna go for the win, but we should be there. That's a track that suited us well last year. And I mean, even if we are not there yet, we will be there in the future. I'm not too worried. I mean, it's a long season, but yeah, I'm pretty confident that Fuji should be a strong one for us. It's always a bit tricky for us because we are the only Nissan with Bridgestone, so we have to develop the tires, we have to develop the setup for those tires. It takes a bit more time than Toyota and Honda that have more cars, more data to share between the Bridgestone cars. But we should be there. I'm quite confident it will be a good race for us. Except if it's raining again, then we'll be struggling again. But if it's dry, we should be there.
We're going to be excited to see what will happen. I'm sure it'll be a great one for you. Bertrand Baguette, Jamie Klein, thank you so much for discussing the upcoming Super GT race at Fuji with me. It's going to be a real great encounter. Thank you both very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you and enjoy the race.
We certainly will. Motorsport.tv is, of course, where you can watch it. Make sure you subscribe to Premium. You can watch it on your television on Apple TV, Fire TV, Roku, Android, or Chromecast. You can watch it on the go with the app, whether you're on Android or iOS. And, of course, you can watch it on your computer, motorsport.tv. I'm Jake Sanson. I'll get myself ready in the commentary box for the next round of Super GT. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you trackside. See you soon.